Howdy folks, HowCorrects here. Welcome to Thoughts from the Inner Sphere, and today in episode 22 we're going to talk about the Stalker, the 85-ton assault mech. The mech that people find themselves pulling their hair out with because they think it's a hot mech. And it can be if you don't know how to use it when it comes to managing your heat, because you can blow this thing sky high because you didn't decide to manage your heat very well. And we'll talk about how to do that in some simple steps. Now, let's just look at this Stalker. The Stalker, 85 ton. It's a 350. Does not have jump jets. It's a slow mover. So you're not going to be displacing very fast to one location to another. Carries 216 points of armor, which is short by a few tons, I believe. I think it's short by like 3 tons, something like that. And it carries 2 LRM-10s with 2 tons of ammo, 2 large lasers, 4 medium lasers, and 2 SRM-6s with 2 tons of ammo. That's a lot of weapons. And let's just say, if you're a mech pilot, do you want to just have everything linked together and mash the firing button and firing every weapon? If you do, if that's the type of warrior you are, guess what? Your explosive charges on your ejection seat will soon be going off, and you'll be punching through the canopy on your way out as your ammo explodes behind you, giving you a nice rush of adrenaline. Yep, that can be your problems. Now, what do I see this mech doing? Well, with the 2 LRM-10s, this mech can, if you wish to do it, and park an 85 tonner someplace, and run the LRM-10 ammo dry, you can do that. Not necessarily how I'd use it, but it can be done. You know, you firing those 2 LRM-10s indirectly or directly at up to range 21 from some nice hidey-ho and not worrying about heat, because you got 20 heat sinks here. And with those 2 LRM-10s firing, that's a maximum of 8 from the weapons, and if you walk, that's 9. You run, that's 10. Alright, so that's not too big of a problem. Now, where the problems start coming in, you reached range 15. Well, you still have your LRMs, but now you have these 2 things called large lasers. What are you going to do? Are you going to fire the 2 large lasers and the 2 LRMs, and there you go, you're sitting at 24 heat. And is that a smart thing to do? Yeah, you're dissipating 20, so you're going to go up 4. Did you walk? Alright, so if you walked, you're now 5 up on the heat scale. Guess what happens? You're going to be slow. Do you wish to be slow? Do you want to be a 2-4 mover? I don't think so. So are you going to fire all those weapons? No, you're not. You're going to shut one of them off. I'd be more inclined to do this. I'll fire 2 LRMs, 10s, and then a large laser for a total of 16 heat. You're still, and if you run even, you're sitting at 18 heat. You're not going to be hot. Alright, this is how you have to look at this mech. You cannot fire everything. Don't get into the habit of doing it. Now, if you find yourself parked someplace, let's say you're in some heavy woods, and you have a nice juicy target that's in range with all those 4 weapons, and you fire all of them, you will go up 4 on the heat scale. Alright, what are you going to do the next turn? Something's going to get shut off, and usually it's probably either a large laser or an LRM-10. You're going to shut one of those things off so you can cool off and not have the detriment of heating up and then slowing down. Now, if I'm a mech jock and I have some SRM-2 Infernos, guess what? I see a Stalker, you know what I do? I hunt that thing down and I fire that thing up. And especially if you have some guy that sits there and just mashes the firing button, he's going to find himself roasting in his own juices. You know, that's just the way that's how I rock. I look for a way to barbecue you. If you're not a heat manager, you're going to be fine in cooking. All right? Welcome to the grill. Now, when you get in range 9 or less, this is where this mech suddenly changes. Its identity is now a knife fighter. It has those 4 medium lasers and it has those 2 SRM6s. If you get into the punching kicking range where you're within 3 or you're trying to stave in somebody's leg with a nice juicy kick, and you're in the melee, full melee mode, this thing can punch out some decent damage here. So you got those 4 4 medium lasers, that's 12 heat, and you have your 2 SRM6s, that's a total of, let's see, those are 6, 4, 8, yeah, you're looking at 20. So 20 heat. The only thing that's going to heat you up is walking or running. Okay? That's not a problem. You can do that for 2 turns. But on the 3rd turn, something is going to get shut off. Typically, I will either shut off an SRM6, and that will drop that 4 heat right off, or depending on where I'm at. If I'm sitting at 23 heat, I might just shut off a medium laser and fire those SRM6s. Yeah, they're 2-point damage plinkers, but on average they're going to do probably just as much damage in the long run as that medium laser. And by the time you get this mech into close range with somebody where you're going to able to kick them, they're going to be missing some armor already, and all those SRM6s hitting is just going to be, it's like, oh, roll, oh, chance for critical, whoop, oh, chance for critical, whoop, chance for critical. And if you roll really high, on an average, let's say you got 3 to 4, that's 7 hits, 7 chances of critical in some open armored area, you're going to be rolling, the law of average is saying you're going to be having at least 2 or 3 internal damage things, and hopefully you're hunting down. It's like, oh, guess what? You have that ammo right there, and suddenly you're going to be exploding. Okay? Now, is there a time when you would fire the 2 large lasers and some of your short range stuff? Well, if you do, you would fire 2 large lasers at 16, and then you could fire a SRM6. All right, or 2 medium lasers. One of the, that's what you can do. So that's you're looking at 22. And if you ran, that's 24. You won't be doing that same thing again the next turn, because you want to get rid of that heat by shutting something down. Because a stalker that's a 3-5 dropping to a 2-4, well, I'm going to be getting out of your way. Or if you have some medium mechs or some light mechs, they're going to be right behind you, and they're going to be punching through on the backside. You have to figure out ways of keeping yourself as mobile as possible when you're a slow mech like this. All right, let's look at some variants here. Let's see. Due to the weight of the stalker, the skeleton is prone to blah blah whatever. The usual cure is for lighten the mech by 10 to 15 tons. The twin LRM-10s are removed. Yeah, okay. Or occasionally one of the LRMs is removed, but remove the number. All right, 1. So really, that's not much of a variant other than lightening things up. They do have that in the books, but yeah, I won't be using that. Another one is to increase the long-range fire support, firepower. The Some modules have refitted their LRM-10s with LRM-20s at the price of the heavy lasers. So yeah, I've seen this one on the board before. This turns it into more of a fire support mech. And having 2 LRM-10s with the appropriate number of ammo slots, this thing can sit there and rain death down from decent range and decent good damage. And with the mech before, when you've seen how often were you going to be firing those large lasers versus how often you're going to fire the LRM-10 or 20s. And that's not a bad variant to have at the expense of the, I think they even increases the armor on it too. Let's see. 7, yeah. I think it does. So that's not too bad of a version to go running around with. Now, what would I do with it? I usually try to avoid the Stalker just because it's kind of a hard mech to manage the heat on. I've never been a really fan of it because it doesn't have any hands. That pretty much is how I look at it. No hands, no able to do a nice punch or pick up things, because if you're in some games, you're moving around and I've been in scenarios before where you have to pick up some type of equipment. That's the objective, and a mech that doesn't have hands is kind of a detriment. And as you can see in some of the pictures there, almost everybody has a hand or two, and the whole purpose of that is to make sure that, you know, if you're in a scenario like that, you can do that. And I think that's more or less a call on my part why I usually don't use a Stalker too much. Now, if I was to tear this thing apart, I would have a tendency, let's look at it this way. Dropping a large laser in favor of upgrading to LRM-15s with some ammo that goes with that. Yeah, that's one way I'd look at it. 2 LRM-15s and a large laser, that's not a bad way to do some long-range support. And that's one way I possibly would look at changing that. But other than that, you just go with the stock one and rock and roll. Manage your heat. This thing's not a bad mech. If you have any questions, drop it down below and subscribe if you want to. This is Hulkrix, and we'll talk to you later.